Marcus Thorne smirked, his polished confidence radiating from the auctioneer's podium. He surveyed the room, a sea of dark suits and eager ambition. This was his domain. Here, he was king. The final parcel of the day, Lot 7B, was a mere formality. A single landlocked acre of forgotten dirt, worthless to anyone except Apex Global Properties, the corporate titan that had already acquired every adjacent square inch for its new luxury golf resort. Their lead counsel, a man with a jaw as tight as his tie, sat in the front row, radiating impatience. This was a procedural auction, a legal box to be ticked before the bulldozers could roll. "We have an opening bid of $100,000 from Apex," Thorne announced, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Do I see 110? Silence. Of course there was silence. Who would bid against them? 100,000 going once. Thorne sang, his gavel held aloft like a scepter, going twice. He was about to bring it down to finalize the multi-million-dollar puzzle for Apex when a voice cut through the stillness. It was not loud. It was not aggressive. It was calm, clear, and utterly out of place. $300. A ripple of confusion went through the room. Heads turned. Marcus Thorne paused, his practiced smile faltering for a fraction of a second. He peered into the back of the conference hall. Standing there was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 16, thin and swallowed by a suit jacket that was clearly 2 sizes too big. His hair was neatly combed, but he looked like he should be in a high school history class, not a high-stakes land auction. A few nervous snickers broke the tension. The Apex lawyer chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. Thorne recovered his composure, leaning into the microphone. His voice dripped with condescension. "Son, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is a professional auction. The current bid is $100,000. The boy didn't move. He didn't blush or stammer. He simply met the auctioneer's gaze. "My bid is $300, he repeated. The snickers in the room swelled into open laughter. Marcus Thorne joined them, shaking his head in theatrical disbelief. He loved a good story for the clubhouse later, and this was shaping up to be a classic. He was laughing. He and everyone else in that room was about to learn the profound difference between a price and a legally binding agreement. They were about to learn about a folded, yellowed piece of paper tucked inside the boy's oversized jacket. A letter written 57 years ago. A letter that would turn their laughter into stunned, expensive silence. 57 years. That's how long the trap had been set. The story didn't begin in that sterile conference room under the hum of fluorescent lights. It began in 1959, under an open sky, with the smell of freshly turned earth in the air. Arthur Vance was a surveyor, a young man with an old soul's attention to detail. He didn't just measure land, he read it. He understood its history and, more importantly, he could see its future. He was working the subdivision of the Old Croft Farm, a sprawling tract of rolling hills being carved up for a new generation of suburban homes. The landowner, Silas Croft, was an old farmer, honest and tired. He trusted Arthur. Arthur had found a mistake in the original county maps, a mistake that gifted Silas an extra 4 acres he never knew he had. Arthur could have kept quiet, bought the sliver himself for pennies. He didn't. He told Silas the truth. Honesty builds a unique kind of currency. Weeks into the project, Arthur was finalizing the plots when he noticed an anomaly. A single 1-acre square right in the heart of the future development. Lot 7B. Due to the strange angles of the new property lines and a stubborn rock formation, it had been completely surrounded. It had no road access. It was an island in a sea of prime real estate, a cartographical error made tangible. The developers who bought the main tracts didn't care. It was a dead zone on the map, a rounding error in their budget. But Arthur saw something else. He saw a key. He knew that one day, decades from now, someone would want to consolidate those surrounding plots. Someone would want to build something big. And when they did, this worthless, forgotten acre would become the most valuable piece of land in the entire county. It would be the linchpin, the heart. That evening, he went to see Silas Croft. They sat on the porch, drinking lemonade as the sun went down. "Silas," Arthur began, "that 1-acre plot 7B. It's landlocked. No one will ever be able to do anything with it as it stands." Silas grunted. "Aye, surveyor's mess, I suppose. Just leave it be. I have an idea, Arthur said calmly. An idea that might help a future generation, and it won't cost you a thing. He explained his theory, the future value, the eventual consolidation. Silas, a man who thought in terms of harvests and seasons, struggled to see 50 years into the future. But he trusted the young man who had found him 4 free acres. Arthur pulled out a piece of paper and a fountain pen. He wasn't a lawyer, but he understood the simple, powerful language of contracts. He drafted a covenant. It was a peculiar document. It granted a perpetual easement, a right-of-way, from Lot 7B across the neighboring properties to the main road. This easement would make the land valuable, but it came with a condition, a very specific condition. The easement would only activate if the land was ever sold to a new owner for a price at or below $300. Any higher, and the land remained locked, worthless. Then he added the masterstroke, a second clause, a right of first refusal. It stated that should the property ever be put up for public auction without a qualifying private offer, first being extended to him or his direct heirs, Arthur Vance or his heir would have the irrevocable right to purchase the property for the sum of $300, superseding all other bids. $300. It was a pittance, but it was a number. It was concrete. Silas looked at the paper. Seems fair. A bit odd, but fair. He signed. The next day, Arthur Vance drove to the county clerk's office. He paid the $2 filing fee. The clerk, a bored man chewing a toothpick, stamped the covenant and attached it to the deed for Lot 7B. He filed it away in a heavy ledger book, in a dusty records room that few people ever entered. A time bomb was now ticking. Its fuse was 57 years long. Arthur Vance put his copy of the letter in a safe deposit box. He never spoke of it to anyone except his son, who dismissed it as one of his father's eccentricities. Years turned into decades. The suburbs grew around the Croft farm. Houses were built. Families were raised. Lot 7B remained empty, a patch of overgrown weeds and wildflowers, a secret whispered only between the deed and the dirt. The land changed hands on paper multiple times, absorbed into larger holding companies. But the covenant, the strange little note about $300, was always there, buried deep in the chain of title, overlooked by paralegals and title search companies who were paid to be quick, not thorough. They saw a landlocked acre and assumed it was worthless. They never asked why. Arthur aged. He became a grandfather. His grandson was a quiet boy named Leo. Leo didn't have his grandfather's gift for seeing the future, but he had something just as important, a gift for listening. He spent hours in his grandfather's study, listening to stories about property lines and forgotten contracts. While other boys were playing video games, Leo was learning about easements and liens. A week before Arthur passed away, he called Leo to his bedside. His voice was frail, but his eyes were sharp. "Leo," he rasped, giving him a small old key. "The safe deposit box. Remember Lot 7B. He made the boy repeat the instructions until they were etched into his memory. When they put it up for public auction, and only then, you will go. You will stand. You will bid $300. No more, no less. They will laugh at you, son," Arthur whispered, a faint smile on his lips. "Let them laugh. Laughter is the sound of surprise. You just hold up the letter." 57 years after it was written, the catalyst finally arrived. It arrived in the form of Apex Global Properties. Apex saw the collection of aging suburban lots not as homes, but as a single contiguous canvas for their next masterpiece, the Cypress Creek Estates and Golf Club. They spent 2 years and tens of millions of dollars buying out every homeowner, every small business, every plot of land, every plot but one. Lot 7B sat exactly where they planned to build their opulent billion-dollar clubhouse. Their high-priced legal team did a title search. They found the plot was owned by a faceless holding corporation in another state. They noted it was landlocked, a nuisance. To clear the title and force the sale, they initiated a public auction, the fastest, most aggressive legal route. It was an act of supreme corporate confidence, an act of hubris. They were about to learn that the quickest path is not always the wisest. Leo's mother saw the small notice in the local paper. Her heart sank. "Leo, this is it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The Croft Acre. It's Apex Global. These people are ruthless. Leo felt a strange calm settle over him. It was the calm of a path laid out long ago. He was not the author of this plan, merely its executor, a custodian of his grandfather's foresight. "I know," he said. "It's time." He went to the bank. He used the small old key. The safe deposit box opened with a quiet sigh of metal. Inside there was a single yellowed envelope. He didn't need to read the letter. He knew it by heart. The next morning, he put on the only suit he owned, his grandfather's old wool jacket, preserved in a cedar closet. It smelled of old paper and quiet determination. He walked into the auction and back to the beginning of our story. The laughter in the room finally died down, replaced by an awkward silence. Marcus Thorne, the auctioneer, looked at the boy with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Son, for the last time," he said, his voice tight. "The bid is $100,000. Are you prepared to meet that bid?" "No," Leo said, his voice steady. "My bid is $300. It is the only bid you can legally accept." He walked forward, past the rows of stunned executives. He moved with a purpose that belied his age. He reached the podium and placed the folded, brittle letter on its surface. The apex lawyer, a man named Henderson, shot to his feet. "Objection, this is absurd," he snapped. "This is a legal auction, not a theatrical performance. Remove the boy, and let's get on with it." Thorne looked from the furious lawyer to the calm boy, to the strange letter on his lectern. The rules of public auction demanded he at least examine any claim, however frivolous. With a sigh of theatrical exasperation, he picked up the paper. It was so old the creases were permanent. The ink from the signature was faded. He began to read it silently. The room watched. The smug confidence on Thorne's face slowly began to dissolve. His eyebrows furrowed. His smirk vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed pallor. Henderson grew impatient. "What is it? Some kind of prank?" "It's a covenant," Thorne whispered, his voice suddenly hollow. "Filed with the county deed for Lot 7B on May 12th, 1959. Henderson laughed, a short, sharp bark. "A 57-year-old covenant? It's unenforceable, irrelevant. Our title search was exhaustive. It came back clean." "Your title search was incomplete," Leo said, speaking for the first time since stating his bid. His voice did not waver. Thorne continued to read, his eyes wide. He looked at Leo, then back at the paper. He understood. He saw the elegant, simple, and absolutely inescapable nature of the trap Arthur Vance had laid. "Mr. Henderson," Thorne said, his professional sheen gone, "this document grants a right of first refusal to Arthur Vance or his heir in the event of a public auction." The color drained from Henderson's face. "What? That's impossible." "It appears your company's action," Thorne said, his words now precise and cold. "The very act of calling this public auction is the trigger for this clause." Silence. A deep, heavy, and profoundly expensive silence. All the high-powered lawyers, the strategists, the corporate raiders, they had all been outmaneuvered by a piece of paper written by a surveyor before most of them were born. "Read the final paragraph," Leo instructed softly. Aloud. Thorne cleared his throat, his hand trembling slightly. He lifted the letter and read into the microphone, his voice cracking. "Should said Lot 7B be offered at public auction, the aforementioned Arthur Vance or his direct legal heir shall have the irrevocable right to claim title by submitting a bid of 300 United States dollars, which shall supersede any and all competing bids." He put the letter down. The game was over. Henderson sank into his chair, whispering frantically to his team. They were pulling out phones, frantically searching digital databases that had failed them. They had looked for liens, for mortgages, for modern encumbrances. They never thought to look for a handwritten promise from 1959. Marcus Thorne looked at the boy. He saw no triumph in his eyes, only a quiet resolve. He looked at the furious, red-faced executives from Apex Global. He lifted his gavel. The wood felt impossibly heavy. "The bid from Apex Global is invalidated by the terms of the 1959 Croft Covenant," he announced, his voice a monotone. "The bid of $300 is recognized." He paused. Going once. Going twice. He looked at the boy one last time. "Sold," he said, the gavel coming down with a soft, final thud. "To the gentleman in the back." Leo simply nodded. He walked to the clerk's table, produced an envelope with exactly $300 in cash, and signed the paperwork. He now owned the 1-acre heart of a $100 million project. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Marcus Thorne was fired before he even left the building. Henderson and his entire legal team were taken off the project in disgrace. The next day, the phone rang in Leo's modest home. It was the CEO of Apex Global. He didn't laugh. His voice was strained, tight with a fury he was trying to conceal. He offered Leo $10,000 for the acre. Leo's mother held the phone, her hand shaking. Leo, doing his homework at the kitchen table, didn't even look up. "Tell him no," he said calmly. An hour later, the offer was $50,000. "Tell him I appreciate the call," Leo said. By the end of the week, the offer had reached $1 million, delivered by a team of lawyers who flew in from New York. They sat in Leo's small living room, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Not yet," was all Leo said. He wasn't being greedy. He was following the final unwritten part of his grandfather's plan. Wait until they understood the value of what they had lost. Finally, 2 weeks after the auction, a final offer was made. It wasn't just a number, it was a package. A multi-million-dollar payment that would secure his family's future for generations. And, more importantly, a 1% perpetual share in the gross revenue of the Cypress Creek Estates and Golf Club. A permanent tribute to his grandfather's foresight. This time, Leo took the phone. "We accept," he said. The first thing he did was pay off his mother's mortgage. The second thing he did was set up a college fund for himself. The third thing he did was drive to the cemetery. He found the simple granite headstone that read Arthur Vance. He brushed the leaves off and placed a small, smooth stone on top of it, a quiet gesture of remembrance. He stood there for a long time, the oversized suit jacket catching the afternoon breeze. "I did it, Grandpa," he whispered to the wind. They all laughed, just like you said they would. Then they stopped. In the end, it was never about the money. It was about a promise kept. It was about the quiet power of patience in a world obsessed with speed. It was about a grandfather's legacy, not of wealth, but of wisdom, delivered by the calm voice of a 16-year-old boy. Apex Global learned a hard lesson that day. They learned that the most important details are often hidden, not in complex algorithms or digital files, but in a dusty ledger, in a simple letter, in a 57-year-old promise between two honest men. They learned the difference between price and value. And it cost them dearly.